Hello, Pre-Algebra. This is Chapter 4, Lesson 4, Solving Equations by Multiplying or Dividing. You may want to get some paper and use the Cornell note-taking strategy if you want to use these notes as your evidence of learning. All right, let's get started. So in the past, you have solved equations using addition and subtraction. That was in Lesson 3. And by the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve equations by using division property of equality and solve equations by using the multiplication property of equality. Remember, we're simply using inverse operations to isolate the variable. So let's take a look at this little key concept chart. When you divide each side of the equation by the same number, the two sides of the equation will remain equal. So if you have multiplication, then you want to divide both sides by the same amount. All right, let's look at some examples. I have solved 7w equals 161. So we write the equation, and because it's 7 times w, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide by the exact coefficient that's with the variable w, which is 7. So we'll divide both sides of the equation by 7, and we find that 7 divided by 7 is 1, and that 161 divided by 7 is 23. So the value of w is 23. All right, let's look at another example. Suppose we want to solve 12p equals 120. It's 12 times p. So what we want to do is we want to use the inverse operation. We have 12p equals 120. The opposite of multiplying 12 times p is dividing both sides by 12. Whatever that coefficient is with that variable is what you divide by. So 12 divided by 12 is 1. 1p is going to be equal 120 divided by 12, which is going to be 10. And so our answer is going to be 10. P is equal to 10. All right, let's look at another example. Let's say that we're going to solve equations by dividing. So solve 7x equals negative 56. Check your solution, and then they want us to graph it on a number line. Well, first of all, let's just solve 7x equals negative 56. All right, here we're writing the equation. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, so we're going to divide both sides by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. A negative 56 divided by a positive 7 is negative 8. So x is equal to negative 8. To check your solution, you're going to replace the x with a negative 8 in the original equation. Our original equation was 7x equals negative 56. We're going to put negative 8 in the place of x, and we're going to see if it makes a true statement. 7 times negative 8 is negative 56, so the sentence is true. That's how we know that the solution is negative 8. If we were going to graph it on a number line, we would simply graph that point on negative 8. All right, let's solve 4x equals negative 12. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. 4x equals negative 12. So I want to divide both sides by whatever the coefficient is with that variable. If it's 4, we're going to divide by 4. If it's a positive 4, we divide by a positive 4. If it were a negative 4, we would divide by a negative 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so that gives me 1x. Negative 12 divided by positive 4 is a negative 3. So, integers are important, so we need to make sure that we're remembering our integer rules. All right, Esteban spends $112 on boxes of baseball cards. He paid $14 per box. Write and solve an equation to find how many boxes of cards Esteban bought. Well, we know that the price per box times the number of boxes will equal the total cost of the cards. we're going to let the variable B represent the number of boxes. So if it's $14 per box, that's 14 times B is equal to $112 that he spent on the total number of cards. So now let's solve that. 14B equals 112. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, so we're going to divide both sides by 14. 14 divided by 14 is 1. 112 divided by 14 is 8. And don't forget that you can check your solution by replacing the b with the 8 in the original equation. So in the place of that b, we're going to put an 8. 14 times 8 is 112. It makes a true statement. That's how we know that the b is equal to 8. So he bought 8 boxes of cards. Eliza spent $27 on donuts. She paid $3 per dozen. Write and solve an equation to find out how many dozens of donuts Eliza bought. So which one of these equations, A, B, C, or D, best represents our word problem? Well, we know that she spent $27 total on the donuts. Well, the only one that has a total is A and C. So we can eliminate these. So now let's look at where she paid $3 per dozen, and we're going to let D represent the dozen that we don't know how many there are. So it's $3 times each dozen. Well, that would be A. So 3D equals 27. If we divide both sides by 3, we'll get 27 divided by 3 is 9. And so we know that she bought 9 dozen donuts. All right, let's look at the next little key concept chart. So when you multiply each side of the equation by the same number, excuse me, the two sides will remain equal. So we've been dividing both sides of the equation by the coefficient with the variable. Now what we're going to do is multiply each side by the same amount. So let's look at a couple of problems. This time we have division. We're given division, and what we want to do is the inverse of that, and we want to multiply. So we have y divided by -5 equals -12, and what we want to do is multiply each side by this exact value. That means that needs to be a -5, and we need to multiply this side by -5. This will cancel out. A negative times a negative is a positive 1y. We need to remember that those variables need to be left in positive form. And then a -12 times a -5 will give us a positive 60. And so again, you have to keep your integer rules in mind. Don't forget that you can check your solution. So let's run through it real quick again. Notice I have y divided by -5 equals -12. I need to multiply both sides of my equation by -5. That's what the denominator is with the variable. And when I multiply -5 times 12, I'll get positive 60. And if I check it, I'm going to put -60 in the place of y. And positive 60 divided by -5 is -12. So that makes a true statement. That's how I know I got the right answer. All right, here we have m divided by 4 is equal to -9. And so the opposite of m divided by 4, the opposite of division is multiplication. So we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the denominator that's with the variable. We're going to multiply it by 4. This will simplify out. And we get m is equal to -36. So you've got to pay attention to your integer rules. A negative times a positive is a negative. And so we get -36, which would be A. All right, let's look at another one. Solve equations by multiplying by the reciprocal. Sometimes when you have a fraction that sits in front of a variable, what you want to do is multiply both sides by the reciprocal of that fraction so that it all cancels out. Let's say that we have negative 3/4 x equals negative 9. All right, let's multiply both sides by negative 4/3. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side of the equation. This will cancel out. A negative times a negative is a positive x, and then I can simplify here. Again, a negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. So our solution is positive 12. I'll just run through it again so you can see it. And that's what you do when you have a fraction as a coefficient to the variable x. You multiply by the reciprocal. And your answer is x equals 12. And if you want to check it, you put 12 in the place of x. You can put all of that in your calculator and you should get a negative 9 equals negative 9. It makes a true statement. All right, let's solve negative 2/3 x equals negative 12. So I want to make sure that I'm multiplying by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of negative 2/3 is negative 3/2. Whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. This simplifies out, and a negative times a negative is a positive x. And I'm going to simplify my fraction. Negative 6 times negative 3 is positive 18. Okay, and that's the examples we have, and I hope this will help you. Thank you, and have a great day.